Hi, welcome back to Mutant Memories, a series where I talk about all the things I love in the X-Men universe. This is a continuation of a series where I am rereading the entire first volume of The New Mutants, while giving my opinions upon rereading and my memories of first reading this series while very young. As always, I will summarize what happens in this issue, but I recommend reading along if possible. In the description, I will add links where you can purchase the comic books. Also, if you need to catch up, I have a playlist with all the issues I've covered so far. Today I will be talking about New Mutants number 10, titled Betrayal. So let's get into it. The plot. The splash page is the scene of the team getting carried on a palanquin through the streets of Nova Roma. The exposition tells us the whole city is rejoicing and many people are gathered on the street to celebrate, to her surprise, a 13-year-old Scottish werewolf. Rahne is considered holy because they think she is related to both Julius Caesar and the wolf called Lupa who suckled the founders of Rome. Rahne is being marched through the street in her wolf form, and the other kids flank her on her sides. So the whole team are now considered living gods, which is a far cry from where they were 24 hours before, fighting in the circus or being ready to be sold as slaves. Sam says he feels like an idiot, and Danny asks if he would rather still be fighting in the arena. Sam says he would rather be home, and Danny says she wishes this as well. Leading the parade is Senator Gallio, and he thinks to himself that he is now a hero to the people of Nova Roma for bringing these kids to the masses, and he will use this power to take over and do what he wants with the city, which is end the Republic and make himself an emperor. He thinks not even Lucius Aquila can stop him at this point. We are shown Amara's father glaring at Gallio as he passes. Sam even comments on how hateful the stare is between the two men, but Bobby says it's none of their business. Bobby begins to think of his mother at this point, and he thinks about how she would have been found most likely by now, just as the soldiers of Nova Roma found he and the rest of the mutants. But there has been no word, no sign. He notices Danny looking at him, but he says he must be strong for the rest of the group. Danny thinks to herself she and Bobby are a lot alike, and that is probably why she cares so much, and she knows he is thinking of his mother. She really wishes Bobby would let her help him. The team is shown into a large palace, which they note is even grander than Xavier's mansion back home. Rahne asks Danny to help her get a robe so she can morph back into her human form so she can walk on two legs again. Danny gets her one, and Rahne is once again human. Danny asks her if she enjoyed the parade, but Rahne explains even though it was fun, she didn't think it was proper for the people of the city to consider her a goddess. Gallio says that she is a goddess to the people, and who's to say that the gods weren't just all mutants in the first place? He then says no more philosophy and calls in some slaves carrying tons of delicious food. Sam asks as they hand him the food if they are all slaves. A girl answers that they all are. Bobby tells the group that when his father was young he was a slave, and that this cushy life in Nova Roma does seem to have a high price. Danny thinks to herself she hopes the boys are more careful because she doesn't feel confident in their situation fully, and just hours before, they were all set to be sold as slaves. So she knows Gallio did save them, but he could change his mind about them at any point. We are told that the feast tastes as good as it looks. Danny thanks Gallio and says he has been very kind to them. He says it's nothing less than they deserve. Sam asks Gallio why one man, who they don't even know is Amara's father at this point, looked so unhappy with them being honored. Gallio says he can probably guess who Sam is talking about, and that they shouldn't worry about him, and he will deal with his esteemed ally, Senator Aquila. Sam realizes then that the man was Amara's father, and he asks if Gallio and Amara's father don't get along. Gallio says that they don't, and that he himself is part of the upper class, the patrician class, and Aquila is a plebeian. He explains that he is from a class built to lead, and he even explains that there are many commoners and even some slave descendants now that serve Rome with great honor. Aquila does not serve with honor, though, he says. Gallio goes on to say that Aquila respects nothing and no laws except his own, and it is rumored that Aquila aims to make himself emperor. Sam immediately recognizes this as fast talk, just like some of the slick things that were said to his father by the managers of the mining company, which made the mining gig sound really great, but when you actually got into the mines, it wasn't that good. He notes that Galio is still treating them like kids, but Danny is playing along and being polite and such, so he will follow her lead. Then he says, while playing dumb and polite, Galio's story was different than the one Amara told them. She told them that her father was on the side of the Republic. We can see Rahne in the background unhappy. She springs forth looking wild, frightening, and feral, screaming at Sam. Why should we believe anything she says, Sam Guthrie? She's a liar and a sneak. Rahne is very angry. Sam is shocked by the display. Danny asks Rahne what is the matter with her. Danny thinks to herself she has never seen Rahne so upset, and that Rahne has seemingly hated Amara since they met her, and she wonders if there's something between the two of them, or something between Rahne and Sam. Galio uses this situation to his advantage and says that Rahne should not judge Amara too harshly, and that she was just trying to be a good daughter to her father. But then he says that Amara escaped without any of the New Mutants, and that seems to show she is no friend of theirs. Rahne says that she thinks this is correct, but the New Mutants stand by their friends, and she pledges the team to help Galio in any way that he might need them. Galio thanks Rahne, and he tells them he has lost his manners and excuses himself so they can get some sleep, and Sam tells him to have a good night as he leaves the room. As soon as Galio is gone, Bobby changes into his sunspot form, bursting out of the armor he was wearing. He says he doesn't understand how the Romans can stand the armor because it is so stifling. Bobby changes back into a human and lies down. He tells Danny to wake him from his sleep in a week, preferably with a kiss. Sam immediately turns to Rahne and asks why she volunteered the New Mutants' help to Galio without even asking him or the others if it was okay. Sam says, "Why shouldn't I?" And Sam explains that they are still strangers in this place, and they really aren't sure who the bad guys are and who the good ones are. In a pretty low blow, he tells her her hate for Amara is making her act insane. Rahne is pretty angry and retorts that the fact that Sam, quote-unquote, likes her is mucking up his judgment, and she asks him who put him in charge anyways. What makes his word gospel? Sam tells her to mind her elders, in true Southern fashion, I guess, and Rahne says she will do no such thing while her elders are acting like babies. Sunspot walks away, thinking that he will lose his temper if he listens to the two fight any longer. He thinks that Danny has been taking charge a lot, and he will let her deal with it. Bobby leaves the room thinking that Danny is a much better leader than he could ever be. He admits he has a temper and that he has no patience. He says that it's just his way to just punch his way out of issues. A female slave sees him walking through the hall and asks if he needs anything. He says, "Nothing, thank you," and she tells him that she could ease his sadness. Bobby just responds for her to let him be alone. He looks out the window into the city below and wonders if his feelings truly show so much, and wonders also if hurt as deep as his own can ever be hidden. He then wonders if he secretly likes feeling sorry for himself and moping. He thinks then that so much has happened and a lot of it has been bad. Bobby becomes lost in memories. First he thinks of his mutant powers first appearing, and how everyone at school stopped talking to him, and everyone was pretty terrible to him, except his girlfriend Juliana, who in the end sacrificed her own life to save his. Then he thinks back to the month before in California, where he had tried to save Shan as they all fell into the ocean, but he agonizes that he was too slow, too late. This leads to memories of a few days before not being able to save his own mother after the ship they were traveling on was wrecked. He laments that Shan, his mother, and even Juliana are dead because of him. He wonders what is the good of his accursed powers if he can't help the people he loves the most. He wishes his father was with him. He thinks about how his father is more like a friend to him, and his father always seems to have the right answers. But then he looks out the window and sees something shocking. Blessed saints! It's impossible, he says. He sees a red-haired woman who looks a lot like his mother being led through the streets. He races down the stairs toward the streets, praying that the woman is her and that she is indeed alive. He is met with the sharp end of several spears. There are guards who will not let him out of the house. He asks what the meaning of this is, and the guards explain that they are acting under Galio's order to keep the kids inside the grand house for their own protection. They tell him some in Nova Roma would mean to do him and the others harm. Bobby won't hear of it and changes into his sunspot form and threatens the guards so they will let him pass. He then has a moment of clarity where he wonders what he is doing, because these people were simply doing their job, and Xavier had trained him and the other New Mutants not to use their powers against humans or others unless there was a need to do so for self-defense. Bobby turns human again and realizes he can't see the red-haired woman anymore, and he thinks he probably imagined it anyways. He apologizes to the guards for losing his temper, says it won't happen again, and heads back into the house. The soldiers are relieved. We see the side entrance to where the New Mutants are staying at night, guarded by 2 soldiers. Danny is relieved that there are only 2 of them and uses her spirit forms to make the men's greatest desires visible. The 2 men see beautiful women and wander off following the illusion. Danny is happy her plan worked, but feels a little bad for tricking the men. But now she is outside as she wished. She claims that because she is Indian and half the city is made up of Inca, no one should even notice her sneaking around. She says she wants to figure out what Nova Roma is, and we don't hear the rest of her thought because she is then grabbed suddenly from behind. Even later that evening, we see Rahne sitting on a windowsill looking very glum. Bobby asks if she's going to sit there all night. Rahne tells Bobby that Danny should have been back hours ago, and she thinks they shouldn't have let Danny go alone. Bobby tells her not to worry about Danny because she is really capable and probably fine. Bobby rubs Rahne's head playfully and says, "Don't you worry your fuzzy little head, Firetop. She can take care of herself." Rahne tells him it tickles. Rahne says she also feels ashamed because she had not been thinking of Danny but herself, and that she had said terrible things to Sam and that she meant them too. She also says she blasphemed, no matter how Galileo tried to explain it away. She says she doesn't know why God has not struck her down yet to burn in hell forever. Bobby tells her not to worry. What the people of Nova Roma think has nothing to do with her, and as long as she sticks to her own beliefs, she has nothing to fear, because God can see into her heart and soul, as long as her beliefs are not shaken. But Rahne tells him her beliefs are shaken. Rahne starts crying and says she likes being a wolf more than a girl, and she likes it more and more with each day. Bobby wonders how to help Rahne feel better, but then notices something moving behind a curtain in the room. We see a gun barrel slide out of the curtain and take a shot at the mutants. The bullet flies in between Rahne and Bobby, grazing Bobby's shoulder. Rahne cries out, "Roberto!" as he cries out in pain. The pain of the bullet makes Bobby stumble backwards and fall out an empty window. Thankfully, though, Sam is awakened by the ruckus, and he blasts forwards to catch Sunspot. Sam thinks that Bobby might be hurt by the fall, and thankfully he grabs him just in time. He rushes back to the room because he's worried about Rahne being alone with the assassin. Back in the room, Rahne is jumping on the person behind the curtain. Rahne is on top of the would-be killer, and the guards and Galileo rush into the room, alerted by the sounds of the attack. Galileo says even though they might have been in danger, the mutants seem to have everything under control. Sam tells Galileo they need a doctor, but Bobby says he is okay. Sam tells Bobby that this isn't ketchup on your shirt, you're bleeding real bad. But Bobby is distracted and tells Sam to look at the person who tried to kill them, saying, "It's Castro." It is indeed Castro, the man who wrecked the boat and might have been the cause of Bobby's mother's death. Galileo tells them not to fear, and the man will be punished for his crimes. Galileo points at Castro and screams that he has come to hurt the sacred children and demands to know who he works for. Castro spits at him and says he won't say anything. Galileo says fine and offers to let Roberto get the answers from Castro himself, and he says Bobby would probably enjoy that a lot. Castro says, No, he'll tear me to pieces, and he says he will talk. Then he says, "It was a senator, Lucius Aquila," to which Galileo says to the soldiers who are now gathered to go to Aquila's house at once and arrest him. One of the soldiers says, "At once, sir." Elsewhere, Danny wakes up to find herself in a strange, unknown place. She wonders where she is, but she finds it hard to focus on any one thought. She remembers someone grabbed her and realizes she must be drugged. She is wearing a strange, I guess you'd call it an outfit, and she thinks she is probably not dressed this way for a party. She looks around more and notices she is in a big cave. She also sees Amara and another girl laying near her, both dressed in equally weird outfits. Danny says they appear to have been drugged as well, and says her mutant gene is probably making her less affected by the drugs. Somehow, I don't know why she thinks that, or if that's true, but I digress. She tries to ask Amara where they find themselves, and Amara can barely answer, but she manages to say she doesn't really know. Danny asks her why they are there. A man holding a torch answers, "To be sacrificed." There are other big strong men with him, and he warns them all to watch Danny, and if she does anything out of line, just kill her. The men begin to lead Danny, Amara, and the other girl through a cave hallway. Danny realizes she is too weak and woozy to use her powers. And she thinks, but I better act soon, but then she knows it is too late. Danny and the other girls find themselves looking at a large cavern with a deep pit in the middle that falls into a pool of lava. The main man leading them tells them, "Behold, the sanctuary of the cult of fire, where, for the glory of our gods, you will be consigned to the eternal flame." Danny wonders if the drug is making her feel certain ways, and then sees something begin to happen on a platform that hangs over the pit, almost like a diving board. Someone materializes. We know that this is Celine Gallio, but she is dressed in a fancy purple outfit and tells the girls and Danny that she is Celine, the daughter of the moon. She reaches out her hand towards the girl with Amara and Danny. "Mistress of Fire," Celine continues. "Come, children, give yourself to me." Danny says she feels a tug in her mind and surmises that Celine must have psychic powers, like Professor Xavier, and that her training from Xavier must be helping her resist the pull Celine has. But in horror, she realizes the other girls don't stand a chance. Danny watches as the other girl with her and Amara walks towards Celine as if in a trance. Celine says, "You are young and your life force full and pure. That is good." The girl can't stop walking towards Celine, but whispers, "Please, no." Danny scrambles to try and help the girl. She tries using her powers, but as hard as she is trying, her powers just don't work. Danny is thinking that somehow Celine must know what she can do and is blocking her powers with psychic abilities. I don't know why she assumes this again. I guess it's just a big assumption. Whatever. Celine tells the girl, who is now on the platform, that she is doing a supreme honor, then pushes the girl headfirst into the magma below. The girl falls and falls into the burning liquid, and Celine screams, "You give me life." Celine then turns to Danny and Amara and explains that she is a goddess who has walked the earth since before history even began. She tells them countless thousands have gone to the fire in her name. Then, menacingly, she asks which one of them is next. Danny and Amara look terrified. Meanwhile, at the Aquila estate, protected by a cohort of the senator's personal guards, Sunspot punches his way through a wall. The soldiers see what is happening, and one of them calls to the others that they need to get to arms because they are under attack. Cannonball blasts through them while saying, "You sure are, mister." But in his mind, Cannonball thinks this is all a little too convenient. The way Castro popped up fingering Senator Aquila as his boss. He also thinks about how Gallio already had an army ready to go after Aquila. Sam then realizes they haven't even been given time to think. He knows that Bobby just wants to bust heads and find Danny, and he wants to as well, but he wants to make sure they are busting the right heads. Gallio, off in the distance, tells Wolfsbane to stay by him because she is important. Wolfsbane tells him she wants to help her teammates, but he says that she cannot be harmed and the risk is too great. Cannonball pulls Sunspot in his human form away from the fighting and tells him the Romans can fight and kill on their own, and also he needs to talk to him somewhere where Gallio cannot hear them. Sunspot wonders what he means. Cannonball tells him as they fly upwards that maybe Wolfsbane is right and Amara is getting to him, but he just doesn't trust Gallio, and he doesn't like what is happening. He tells Sunspot that they cannot stop Aquila from being arrested, but they can make sure he's not accidentally killed in the fight. That way, he might be able to get a fair trial. Sunspot agrees with this plan. Gallio's soldiers break down a door that Aquila was behind, screaming, "There he is!" But Aquila is not willing to go down without a fight, and he is holding a short sword. He asks the soldiers what they are afraid of, that he is just a man past his prime. But he shows some skill and easily defeats one of the soldiers. He then wonders aloud who is next. The soldier coming says that Gallio wants Aquila's head on a pike, which Aquila says will cost him dearly, and screams, "Who dies next?" Just then, Cannonball and Sunspot break through the wall, but even if they did hear what the senator and centurions were saying, they probably couldn't understand it because they were speaking in Latin. But Sunspot sees Aquila is in danger and tells Cannonball that it appears that Cannonball was right and that Aquila might get killed. Sam stands in between Aquila and a soldier trying to attack and tells the soldiers to back down because they got the man they came for and his forces are also defeated. Also, there's no need for further bloodshed. The soldiers tell him to step aside, but Sam says that they captured Aquila and they will keep him. Then he says, "Lesson, you want to argue the point." I love that Sam sounds like my southern grandmother here. It's pretty funny. In the next panel, Aquila asks Galileo and Latin, who has come to the scene, if he is angry to see that he is still alive. Galileo thinks, curse those interfering youths, but calmly tells Aquila and Latin, not really. You'll be dead soon enough once the Senate condemns you for high treason. He then adds a little jab by saying, the evidence is overwhelming, to which Aquila screams, lies, lies and forgery. It is you who would betray us to the outside world, would see Rome destroyed, simply to further your own ambition. Galileo says, even if that were so, there's nothing Aquila can do to stop him, and he has won. He tells him that Rome belongs to him, for him to do with whatever he pleases, then instructs the soldiers to take Aquila away. Galileo turns to the New Mutants and begins to speak English again. He tells them that words cannot express his gratitude for the services that they have helped with. But then we see Bobby thinking to himself, and he reveals that he can speak Latin, a fact he has kept secret since the New Mutants arrived in Nova Roma, gambling that it would be useful as they interacted with the locals. He thinks that from what he heard Aquila and Galileo say, they probably have made a big mistake, and he has to tell Sam. Back in the cave, where Selene is sacrificing people, she now has Amara standing before her, about to be sacrificed to the hot, fiery liquid below. Selene tells Amara that she's known since Amara was born that she was going to sacrifice her the same way she sacrificed Amara's mother. Amara still looks pretty out of it, probably under the thrall of Selene's telepathy. Selene monologues that Amara's father tried to hide her among the Amazons who fled Nova Roma to escape Selene, but that Amara is just as stubborn and courageous as her father, and she has returned to help her father, so she will share his fate. She tells Amara she will kill her, and her husband will kill Amara's father, and all of Aquila's dreams will turn to dust. Danny thinks no to herself. Danny thinks she doesn't care how strong Selene is, she will not allow her to kill anyone else. She knows she has to break free completely. She manages to do so, and her phantom forms terrify the men holding her back. She runs up the stairs to where Selene has Amara hostage on the platform. She wishes she had a bow or a rifle so she could just drop Selene from a distance. Selene is surprised and screams, "What? You?" as Danny rushes towards her. Danny realizes Selene must not have known anyone was equal to her in powers. Danny reaches Selene, thinking if she can just manage to distract Selene with a mind phantom, she could knock her into the lava. But at that moment, Selene grabs Danny by the throat. "You should have fled me when you had the chance, youngling," Selene screams at Danny. Selene says she is proof against Danny's mind trick. I think, does she mean that her mind is proof against those? It's kind of a strange way to say that, but maybe I'm being dumb and misreading this. Selene holds Danny up by the throat and tells her that she and Danny are kin. She knew it from the first time she saw Danny in the arena. Selene keeps talking and says now she is sure Danny is like her, and how she wandered alone for countless generations, believing herself to be unique and a special breed of human above all else. But now, after seeing Danny and the other New Mutants' powers, she realizes she is not alone. Danny is like, what is she saying? Is she saying that she's a mutant too? She wonders if this is why people hate mutants, because of monsters like Selene. Selene uses a long fingernail to cut Danny's face open. Selene asks Danny to join her as she leaves exile and reaches out all over the world to claim it as her own. She explains that she has tasted Danny's blood, and Danny cannot resist her, because in drinking Danny's blood she has touched her soul. Amara is still standing in front of Selene, but at that moment she seemingly breaks free from Selene's hold and spreads her arms wide apart and screams, "Murderer!" Amara lunges at Selene and explains that Danielle fighting Selene allowed her to break free, to which Selene just says, "So?" And casually she knocks Amara off the ledge while saying calmly, "You are no threat." And without a sound, Amara disappears into the lava pool. But then, all of a sudden, the streets all over Nova Roma begin to shake and crumble. Rahne asks what's happening. Bobby screams that it's an earthquake. I think it's a random person, but it could be Galileo. Tells the mutants that the ground often shakes in Nova Roma, and that everyone there is used to it, but it rarely does so with such violence or without warning, and he wonders what it means. Back in Selene's cave, we see a girl made out of magma and fire rising up from the pit on a burst of fiery lava to face off directly with Selene. The girl screams at Selene, "Behold your folly, demon, and your doom. The child you thought slain has been reborn, made one with the molten heart of the earth itself, and in the name of your countless victims, she will have vengeance. Selene stands in front of the fiery being, and Danny is half collapsed at Selene's feet. This is the end of the issue. The next issue is called simply Magma. Memories of original reading. So, like the last issue, I don't have many memories about this issue from when I first read it. I was probably around 13 years old when I read it. The only thing I really remembered was the part about the sacrifices Selene was making. I remembered the part with the first random girl who gets sacrificed in the issue really, really well. The illustrations really stuck with me from this. It's drawn in a pretty creepy way, and I remembered exactly what this scene looked like before I read this, down to almost a panel per panel memory. The look on the girl's face is pretty scary to me, and I'm not normally a person that gets creeped out easily. It was actually the main scene I remembered from the entire Nova Roma arc before rereading these. The other part I remembered well was the end, where Amara rises from certain doom as a fire person. I do have to admit the visuals for this were really good as well, so there's not much else I remembered, but it was really fun to revisit this. Thoughts upon rereading. So I know that was a long recap, but truly so much happened in this issue. I want to say first thing, I loved this issue, which is really kind of an unexpected thing. I did like the last issue, but I never expected I would like this issue even more. It had a little bit of everything I like about the New Mutants when the New Mutants is at its best. I do think the art was pretty good, but there was a few places where the finishing is kind of odd and too dark, mostly in the first couple pages. But it's not every panel or every page, and mostly doesn't distract too much from the story.
Hello, this is Editing Ashling, and I just realized one little plot hole that I didn't mention at all in this recording was when Danny disappears and is kidnapped by Selene's fire cult. It seems like Galio doesn't notice that she's missing, which I found to be kind of bizarre because he was keeping such close tabs on the mutants and forcing them to stay in the house. How did he not notice that Danielle was missing, or did he just not care because he knew his wife had her? And he never mentions anything to the mutants, even to cover himself or pretend that he doesn't know what happened. He's just like, oh, I just won't mention it. If he was smart, he would lie to them and be like, hey, where did Danny go? I don't know. I just thought that could have been a good thing, but whatever. It's not a major thing.
So I don't know how Sam could see the faces that Galio and Aquila were making at each other. How could he even tell Aquila was glaring at him? But I guess it's okay. I just found that to be a little unrealistic. The main thing I loved about this issue was we got so many character building moments. We really got to sit with the kids' feelings and thoughts, and I love learning more about them. Bobby or Roberto has had so many moments during this issue where we see that there's just great sensitivity behind his bravado and anger. I really love that he even asked himself if it was possible he secretly liked feeling bad for himself. I like that he asks himself this, even though I definitely think he deserves to be pretty broken up with all the trauma he has been through since the beginning of the series. It was especially heartbreaking that he wishes his father was with him, and his father was like a best friend and would know what to do. I feel so bad for him that he doesn't know how terrible his father is yet, and how his father put his mother and himself in the danger they find themselves in now. Also, Bobby realizes when he yells at the guards that he is going against everything he was taught to do, and he is becoming violent and unhinged a little because of his grief. I feel bad that a teenager would have to grapple with all that, but also it does make for really good reading, and it heightens the drama a lot. I have not looked ahead yet, but I'm pretty sure Nina is still alive. I remember now, also, I think Bobby's parents get divorced after this, which, yikes, sucks. Even more sucky things for Bobby. And I know eventually Bobby does find out how awful his father is. I would say I find Bobby's reaction to everything that has happened to be pretty realistic. He's just a kid, and in the span of a few months, 3 people he cares about have basically been murdered. I kind of think it's interesting that he is the main person in the group who still cares about and is upset over what happened to Karma. The rest of the group just seem to push it aside. Oh, I guess Bobby is angry again. Also, there's a random slave who offers to make Bobby forget his trouble. That was pretty yikes. Bobby is not even an adult. Thankfully, he tells her to go away, and I don't have to go into the politics and legality and problematic nature of sex and slavery and an underage Bobby. The other big character building moments are between Rahne and Sam. I mentioned in the last video that I kind of wondered if Rahne rooting for Sam over Roberto in the games was random, and if her calling him her love meant anything or was just random. And I was pretty sure it did from remembering the other issues of the book, but now I feel confident to judge it more. Rahne obviously likes Sam as more than a friend, I think even at this point. She definitely does later on. And I know she is jealous of Amara, but let's not forget that Rahne is kind of right that Amara does initially lie to the mutants, and not only pretends that she can't speak English, but that she is an Indian person. So when Sam defends Amara, I kind of understand where Rahne is coming from. Plus, Rahne feels humiliated by Amara because she revealed a bunch of personal things to her when she thought she couldn't understand what she was saying. And Amara doesn't really ever apologize about this. So Rahne and Amara started out on the wrong foot. I don't completely agree with Sam or Rahne in the situation, so I would have probably been like Bobby and just said nope and walked away. I think the two care about each other, and it made me sad to see them fight. But at the same time, I was glad Rahne stood up for herself against Sam. I like Rahne's spunk. At times she can seem weak or a little unstable or just really traumatized, but really she is a very passionate and strong person. I think Rahne is being a little hard on Amara, but also the kids don't know that Amara didn't escape, leaving them to their fates at this point. They don't know that she tried to rescue them. Another thing that is explored a little more in this issue is Rahne's faith and her feelings around her mutant power. I really like the theme and stories of teenage girlhood being monstrous in an allegorical kind of way, and I feel like Rahne's power can definitely lend itself to this theme. She was a pious kid who grew up to be a teen mutant who changes into a creature most would consider a monster. Not only is she a mutant and was almost killed by her one-time father figure, she is in a different country with a different lifestyle. But on top of all that, she's a teenage girl developing and going through puberty, and she's beginning to have more complex feelings, like what she feels for Sam. It must be very confusing to have all this happen, especially through the lens of being a hyper-religious person. Then at this point she finds herself being worshipped as a living god in Nova Roma. She definitely likes the attention to a point and finds it exciting, but she also feels like she is sinning by pretending to be a god when she feels she definitely isn't one, and has just such a strong sense of Presbyterian or Catholic, depending on who you ask, feelings. Both Presbyterian or Catholic, whichever she actually is, are religions that are kind of steeped in guilt anyways, so she feels awful all around. She admits to Bobby that she also likes being a wolf better than being a girl, and she likes it more and more every day. I feel and she has pretty much stated that not only is being a full wolf an interesting and stimulating experience, but also it feels easier than being a teenage girl, especially a mutant teenage girl. I truly feel for Rahne too, just like Bobby. Also, Bobby tells Rahne when she's wondering why God hasn't killed her and banished her to hell, that God knows her heart and soul, and I never realized before, like ever when I was reading this, that Bobby was Catholic and religious, maybe not to the same degree, but to a point like Rahne, but he definitely has faith. He is Roman Catholic, which makes sense because it's the largest religion in Brazil. As I was saying before, I sometimes see people say that Rahne is Protestant or Scots Presbyterian, but I also see her being explained as being raised Catholic, so I don't really know. I think I'll lean towards her being Scots Presbyterian. That seems to be the most popular answer, but really, it could be either Catholicism or Presbyterian. I really don't know what Dani was trying to do when she snuck out of the mansion they were kept in. I might have missed it, but yeah, what was she doing and who grabbed her? It just seemed like meh writing. So Dani passes out again in this issue. Also, she ends up in another revealing outfit, but so does Amara, and I'm sure the artists were happy to have another girl to draw in these weird skimpy outfits. My husband was teasing me the other day and reminded me that this comic was probably most likely aimed at teen boys, so that is likely the reason for all the skin. I don't think it's like too bad, but I don't understand why they couldn't have the girls in like a fancy stola or something like a shiny dress that Andromeda has on in the movie Clash of the Titans when she's being sacrificed to the Kraken. I know that's ancient Greece and not historically accurate in any way. I just think it would have been more visually interesting if the artist had done something like that. Like, as the girls fell into the pit of fire, their shining, flowing dresses flap all around them very dramatically. I guess, in a way, having them almost naked could also be a way of showing them as even more vulnerable, but maybe I'm giving my boy Sal too much credit there. Like I said before, the sacrifice scenes were something that really stuck with me all these years later, and I think it's still a really great scene. I love the look on the girl's face that Selene kills first, but not like I love it, it's just very effective. The action scenes overall were great in this issue, from this example to the part where Castro attacks Bobby and Rahne, or when Bobby and Sam burst into Aquila's mansion. I do think Sam is being a little easy on Amara because he likes her. I didn't mention it last issue, but he gives her his shirt and carries her around for a while in the last issue, and he is the only person who is really completely on her side and trusts her, which I don't think was completely wise. Even though it amused me in a way, I was so sad that he was so hard on Rahne. He's a lot older than her, and he was caring to everyone up until this point. But he's the one who also starts to figure out that Galileo maybe isn't on the right side of the struggle they have found themselves in. This is good because the rest of the mutants are just kind of going with the flow, so it's good that he realized that. Also, I didn't mention this, but Sam says he thought he saw a resemblance between Amara and her father. Like, no, Sam, no you didn't. How do you see a resemblance between this and this? I don't really see it, and I also don't think Sam was close enough to Aquila to really see him. But I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Also, like, why didn't Bobby tell anyone that he could speak Latin? I guess maybe it could make sense. It's weird that he doesn't, like, hear much in Latin when they arrive. Also convenient. I guess I could believe that maybe Bobby learned Latin because he is wealthy, and I guess I associate knowing Latin with being aristocratic for some weird reason. He could have studied it at school too, because they even offered it as a language choice at my high school. Brazilians speak Portuguese though, mainly, just in case you didn't know. I'm pretty impressed that Mirage, Danny, was able to fight off Selene's psychic attacks. I also didn't remember Selene actually drinks Danny's blood. I remember that she's a psychic vampire in a way, but I didn't remember the actual blood drinking. I had a conversation with people tonight, the night that I'm writing this, where I nerded out and told them all about Selene because they were wondering about mutants older than Wolverine. We learned so much about Selene's past in this issue, and I really don't know how I didn't feel more interested in her when I was originally reading comics. She's a very unique character. Also, though it was pretty intense, I loved Amara's speech to Selene at the end, and that panel was just so cool to look at. I really liked this issue so much, and I feel really, entertained by most of what happens in this story. Obviously, there were some small things I picked at, but this was really a return to the feeling I had with the first couple issues before the Team America fiasco. I am very excited to read the next issue, and I'm trying to hold off until after I record this audio so I don't know too much when I'm recording it, and it doesn't color anything I say. So yeah, looking forward to the next issue. I was in a little bit of a slump around issue 5, but as the issues go on, I'm getting really excited to move on and read more and talk about things more. There's some really great stuff coming. Final rating. I gave this issue a solid 9 out of 10. I rated it with a 2 out of 3 points for art, a perfect 3 out of 3 for the story. Even though there were minor issues I had with it, I gave it a 3 out of 3 for character development because we got so much development of Bobby, Sam, and Rahne, and Selene as well, and some side characters too. And I gave it a 1 out of 1 for how it holds up. I really enjoyed this issue. So do you agree? Do you think it wasn't as good or as good as I did? What are your feelings about the Nova Roma arc so far? Feel free to leave a comment below. If you want to see more of this series or other X-Universe and videos about random stuff too, stay tuned and maybe stick around and subscribe. If you liked this video, please hit the like button. If you have any constructive criticism or something you would like to see more of with these videos, I want to know about it. I really hope you are enjoying your summer if you are watching this when it comes out, or having a great day or night. See you back soon. Aisling.